Good evening. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by, one, accessing the webcast at www.cityofclovis.com/agendas. Two, providing written comments at same website. Three, participating by phone, or four, coming to the City Council meetings in person. At this point, I will call the meeting to order, and I would ask Councilmember Bessinger to lead us in the flag salute.
Join me in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Councilmember Ashbeck is absent this evening. Councilmember Bessinger?
Here.
Councilmember Wanatua?
Here.
Councilmember Whalen?
Here.
Mayor Flores?
And I'm here. Public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the City Manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. Anyone in the chamber wishing to make a public comment on any topic not on the agenda? I see no one. Anybody on the web?
There are none.
Okay, and we received no correspondence.
We did not receive any.
Next, ordinance and resolutions. With respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance, and unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by unanimous consent of the council. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Items considered routine in nature are to be placed upon the consent calendar. They will all be considered and voted upon in one vote as one item, unless the council member requests individual consideration. The council member's vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of adoption of a consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For adoption of the ordinance, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. Today we have 9 items on our consent calendar, and Councilmember Whalen has asked that we pull consent item 4. Is there any other council member wanting to pull an item? Nope. Anyone in the audience wishing to pull an item from the consent calendar? Is nobody here in chambers? How about on the web?
There are none.
And we received no correspondence regarding any others, so I will entertain a motion regarding the remaining consent items.
Motion to approve consent calendar items with the exception of number 4.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries with 4 votes, 4 ayes, and 1 absence. And we'll hear now item number 4, finance receives and files finding and recommendation from Community Facilities District Citizens Committee, and this will be presented by Gina.
Good evening, Mayor and fellow council members. So this is a map of the 2004-1 CFD, which is north of Herndon and east of Locan, and it's the most current map to date. So a little over 12.7 million has been received so far since its inception in 2004. I showed the 2 latest annual amounts that we have received. In 1920, it was a little over 2 million. In 2021, it was 2.1 million. And the revenue is split, 2/3 goes to the police department and 1/3 goes to fire.
And then where the funding goes from there is basically the 2/3, 1/3 is split. It's allocated for general fund use, which predominantly a majority of both police and fire are funded through general fund. And it was a formula that came up with the original $165 from Muni Financial in 2004. But basically, they used a formula for homes per quarter mile or quarter district to justify part of the expenditure, and then the other portion of the expenditure was the difference between, let me make sure I get the right name of it. Basically, the essential services when we annex, of the difference of service between the county when they come over to being the city, the difference in level of service and public safety to make up the difference between those two levels of service.
Is that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob, you have questions?
Yeah,
for
thank you.
staff?
This is just I know this is sort of kind of a receive and file item. So thank you for pulling those numbers together. I was curious how much money had been going to our public safety since the inception of the CFD, and you know, obviously that it continues to increase, which makes a lot of sense in light of the fact that you know, we're building into some of those areas. I was, maybe I'm not really clear, or my memory is not as good as I sometimes think that it is, but I thought that we wanted to make sure that those areas, could you put that other map up, the one that, yeah. So those areas that are in the CFD are supposed to, I thought, receive some, you know, benefit that maybe some of the other homes in the city of Clovis do not receive as a result of paying the extra money that they pay as a result of the property tax that the council imposed upon them. Have you been able to figure out some type of a nexus, or am I misrecollecting that these people were supposed to be receiving some additional services as a result of them paying more in taxes to the community?
The additional service, according to the Wildan report, was really from the level of service from the county to the level of service from the city, like a 2-person engine company compared to a 3-person company, the amount of officers per square mile or quarter mile compared to the county to here, and that's what it was to augment the cost for that additional level of service, because single-family residents don't generate enough tax revenue to make up that difference.
Okay, you know, I thought that might be what you were communicating during your presentation, but it didn't connect with me. And the reason it doesn't connect with me is that the people who are paying this additional tax would be receiving these services if they happen to purchase a home that was not in one of the CFD areas. I mean, they get that difference between the county and the city just regardless. So what I hear you communicating is that they're paying more money for public safety services, but they're not necessarily getting any additional services from the city of Clovis that they otherwise would be entitled to as a homeowner in the city of Clovis. You're simply saying, as I understand it, is that when you move from county to the city of Clovis, you will receive additional services. But that's something that's true of everybody who you know, buys a home or builds a new home in the city of Clovis. So I don't understand why the people in the CFD are having to pay extra money for services that they are otherwise entitled to. Can you help me to understand that part?
Well, I think where you could say that is let's just use New Station 6, and let's just say we'll take the SAFER grant out of it. So let's just say it was where it's at, is that it would delay them from having those amount of officers in their area, that a station, and that staffing, because it's designed to pay the ongoing cost. We wouldn't have the actually close to about $1.9 million annually to staff that station if it wasn't for the current $660,000 that the fire department receives from the CFD. So it's augmenting really that expansion. Our current tax base is paying for those services that are there, but to have that expansion, and they come before, like look at that map there, Station 6 is going to serve all of that and then some, but there's still a large portion of that area that isn't built out yet. So in turn, you need something to augment that cost to full build out.
So I guess for me, the delay of the building of Station 6 I don't know if, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me, because if I recall the financing component, well, I'll just let you, if you don't mind, could you explain how it is that we've, have financed Station 6?
Well, so if you want to talk developer impact fees, we can look at what developer impact fees for the fire department that go back to the spreadsheet that I've seen, that go back all the way till 1999.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even collected enough to pay for all of Station 6.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue that we look at in developer impact fees is we don't incrementally raise, we seem to take bigger jumps and try to get caught back up, but you're always losing to inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So as a matter of fact, as you're losing to inflation over that period of time, it always requires some additional funding to make up the difference for inflation over the period of time that you collect to when you actually build.
Okay.
So we have to finance for the fire station, and unfortunately, we seem to have to do them in twos. So we built Station 5, and we had to rebuild Station 1. So that was a double whammy hit, partial, the general fund, and all of the developer impact fees we've collected over that period of time. We're now doing the same thing to finance the $7.5 million from the TCP fund in order to pay back that with developer impact fees over the next 15 years. And then we will have to find another funding source to pay for the remodel or the rebuild of Station 2. Mm-hmm. If you look at where we are, build that back out, 2035, 2036, the growth to the north will be there. You'll be looking at Station 7, and you'll be looking to do the exact same thing, unfortunately, again, which will be Station 3, which then will come with a cost, and that station will be almost 50 years old. So the cycle continuously repeats itself, unfortunately, but that's basically the way the cycle works, is that we'll have to come back then and figure out some general fund money to redo Station 3, and you'll have to then use, DIFs by then will still probably be close to zero. You'll have to finance again for the DIFs to be collected in order to pay them for Station 7 in 2035, 2036 range, as long as 750 homes per year are being built.
So the part that I thought we had worked through was related to the benefit of borrowing of the funds that came in as a result of the lawsuit that we successfully won. But I also hear you saying, just kind of in the background, and I'm maybe reading too much between the lines, is that you're saying that development impact fees are not enough to build our stations, fire stations at least. And I know that you're just using that as an example, and we focused on that as an example, but the idea is that if you move to the city of Clovis, you should be able to receive the same types of benefits that everybody else receives who lives in the city of Clovis and not have to pay more for that. Yet the CFD requires people to pay more in property taxes who live in that particular area. And if development impact fees aren't paying for the stations to be built, then I think we need to reevaluate our development impact fees.
Well, I think there's two separate things. Okay. So developer impact fees pays for the fire engine, the turnout or personal protective equipment, about $7,000 per firefighter that goes into that fire station initially, and then the building cost. So all in, staff of 9 people, all those pieces, let's call that $9 million. The CFD picks up a portion of that annual cost of those 9 firefighters over time, and then that fire engine in 15 years needs to be replaced. We can't use developer impact fees. We have to use general fund dollars or CFDs. The CFD is to make up the ongoing costs forever for the term of that station.
Okay, I must have misunderstood you, because I thought you were talking about that without the CFD, there would have been a delay in the building of that station, and I just understood that to mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Not the building, just the revenue to staff it. So in turn, where we get the revenue, continuous revenue of the $1.9 million to open and operate Station 6 for the future. So with safer work, we've got 2 or 3 years of cushion in there, but when that runs out, that's a $1.9 million a year cost of the general fund that will go on and obviously increase with the rate of inflation and slowly but surely be $2 million and $2.1 million and continuously grow and never go away.
Right, I understand. I'm thankful for the SAFER grant. All right, well, okay, so somehow we have to continue to justify how it is we're requiring other people who live in the city of Clovis to pay more than others in order to receive the types of service that they should be otherwise entitled to. And I'm not so certain that we've been able to lay out that argument. I'm not saying that we need to remove the CFD, But I think that it's something that we need to be transparent about, is that there are some people in the city of Clovis who are paying more in property taxes than other people, and they're not getting any additional services as a result of that. And that I find to be unequal at best. So I appreciate you making the presentation. I did want to ask these questions mostly to find out cumulatively how much money has been raised as a result of CFD, and we're at 21 million. And the annual amount that's brought in from the CFD continues to grow, and I presume will continue to grow as we continue to build into these areas. So, for example, everything that's going to be built north of Shepherd, I presume all of that is going to be in the CFD. Is that fair to say? Okay. All right. And, all right, then I have no other
But we
questions.
owe money
Go ahead.
from CFD back to the fund, to the balance. We've spent more than what we've collected. As you see here, of the 12 million, almost 4 of it's just been collected in the
12 million,
last
thank
2
you.
years. So the first 10, 11 years from '04 to like 16, the amount collected was very minimal because we had to get
There weren't
development.
that many
from the
homes that
communities.
were being,
Exactly.
yeah, that were built in that area.
So the real dollars are starting to come in more recently in the last few years.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Gina or Chief, but for the CFD money, if it weren't collected from, generally speaking, newer arrivals to Clovis, what would happen to those who have been here before?
That we're currently collecting from or have been collecting from?
No,
Is that what you mean?
we didn't have this money being collected by, wouldn't you agree, these are new arrivals, right? So from people who have been here forever, if we didn't collect new money from new arrivals, what would happen to growth and or sustainability of the public safety services that once they had, but because of new arrivals, what would happen?
Well, I'm going to speak mostly from fire, but I would assume the police chief would say the same thing, is our jobs as public safety professionals is this is the amount of funds that the city council allocates us. We in turn then use those funds to best serve the community as a whole, and we would reshuffle resources to serve the entire area, not the old or the new. We would treat them all basically the same as citizens of Clovis. So yes, some areas could be less personnel and to move over to pick it up if they're into the new areas, because somewhere they need to be serviced.
So older sections of town would be subsidizing newer sections of town if there wasn't a new source of revenue. Some could say
Well, I don't necessarily say subsidize, I would say the level of service and
would be reduced.
would potentially be reduced, because somewhere you have to service the new area.
So one of the reasons the CFDs came about was so that wouldn't happen. So we can keep our level of service in the older sections of town and the newer sections of town equal or close to.
And on behalf of fire, that is basically what the new gets to. The new area of Station 5 and Station 6 will receive the exact same service that the center core of the city, i.e. Station 1, Station 2, has received for the last, 30, since 1978, since we did three-person engine companies.
So, but isn't that why CFDs occurs, is so people who come here later can have this augmented service and not take from those who were here before?
I think that's potentially one of the goal. I mean, one of the main goal is of the CFD that the Wildan report talks about is that the current taxation under California and Prop 13, I think we get 14 cents on the dollar that for single-family residents that they require more service than what their 14 cents per dollar is unfortunately paying for. But that's the taxation of the state of California. Single-family, and if you look at it, what was the model? We used to look for rooftops drove sales tax, and now what do we look at is rooftops drive Amazon. So, and Amazon now is looking to take that funds to Fresno as their point of sale contact. So in turn, that's a reduction to us. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast of taxation. And the CFD's point is it's collected locally, it's spent locally, and that's the benefit of it, to maintain that level of service.
Any questions?
I agree a little bit with Councilman Whalen in the confusion in understanding the CFD. I think it's that fourth bullet, and I think it says it in the report, and that the first CFD is to focus of the area, meaning the new areas, but really it's for the city, correct? And so because of that, you kind of think only they are benefiting, and the rest is already taking care of itself, and the fees that are being collected are helping solely that area. And the way it's read in here, sort of the recommendation says, again, the committee is recommending that the district and associated tax assessments be continued as currently established to meet the funding requirements needed to sustain service levels in the new growth areas. So when you read that, you think it's only for them. But really what I'm hearing tonight is it's really for fire and police services for the entire city, and may go to wherever is most needed. And so it's not directly at only those areas. Is that accurate? More accurate, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So the rationale behind the CFD was that as we grow with residential and these new areas come on, there's an incremental additional cost associated with them being further from headquarters, et cetera. You got more ground to cover. But, you know, one of the fundamental questions on a CEQA analysis before any project is this project going to impact public safety services? We analyzed the cost of the public safety services compared with the tax revenue we get from the property taxes for this development. And the fact of the matter is, as the chief has said, the funding mechanism for residential development is not sufficient to cover the public safety services associated with that development. So the idea of the CFD was that we would implement this district and an assessment just on those new growth areas. And it doesn't pay for all the services there. It pays for a portion of the services there. But that by doing so, we would not be draining down the public safety as Clovis as a whole. We would not be impacting public safety services as Clovis as a whole. Without this CFD and the revenue, we would be forced to spread our resources thinner and thinner in the newer parts, but also in the older parts. But the newer parts wouldn't get the same police service that was existing right before they came in, just because we're spread thinner. So on that CEQA analysis, it would actually trigger that, yes, that is an impact. That this development is leading to a reduction in overall public safety services. So that was the rationale. Again, there was a small increment of it was based on the distance, just that, you know, it's further from police headquarters, there's more transit time back and forth, but it's really a revenue source to offset the additional costs, because had we had no growth occurring before, you know, had we just no growth from 2004 on, we would have had the same revenue and been able to provide the same high level of service to the existing city. But as soon as we start growing, we start needing to add officers, but the revenue isn't commensurate with that cost. So that was the CFD, was just to pay for that incremental difference.
Could I get if I don't mind, could I get the Wildan report at some point?
Do you have it?
Yes, we'll get a copy of that to all council members.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And then, I'm sorry, one other thing. If I could get the original, if it's somewhere in the archives, the original staff report related to implementing the CFD, I would appreciate that.
Any questions from the public? Any questions from the web?
There are none.
Okay, no correspondence on this one?
No.
I'll bring it back to the council.
I think it's just received and filed.
Oh, yes, it is. Okay, so no action needed. Thank you. Next, we'll go to public hearings. A public hearing is an open consideration within a regular or special meeting of the City Council for which special notice has been given and may be required. When a public hearing is continued, notice of the adjourned item is required as per Government Code 54955.1. Item 10, conduct a public hearing and consider approval of a resolution declaring the results of the property owner protest ballot proceeding and approving the engineer's report for Assessment District 95-1 Black Horse Estates, confirming the assessment for the 2021-22 fiscal year. And staff will be Sean Smith. Go ahead.
Good evening, Council. I'm here tonight to conclude a Prop 218 vote for the Black Horse Assessment District. I'd like to start with a brief recap of recent events, starting in May, when Council acted on a resolution of intent to begin the process for the Prop 218 vote to consider increasing the annual assessment rates. Staff initially proposed to immediately mail out the ballots and return to Council and open them on July 12th. The Council heard testimony that night from some of the homeowners and directed staff to provide more outreach, as well as delaying the mailing of the ballots. Staff held a neighborhood meeting that had both in-person and virtual options on May 20th, and then we also met with an individual homeowner on May 24th. Additional information was posted to our website as it became available, and the ballots were mailed out May 27th. Tonight we return to conclude this process by opening and tabulating the ballots. Following my brief presentation, the Mayor will open up the public comment portion of the item to hear from any that might want to speak on this topic. In order to count for this vote, a ballot must be received by the end of this public comment period. The Mayor will make the final call for ballots and then close the public comment portion of the item. We'll have a brief recess, in which time staff will open and tabulate the ballots by area. At the completion of the tabulation, the Council meeting will resume and the results by area will be declared. Each property is allowed one vote. The vote will pass or fail by area based on a simple majority of the ballots received. Oops. Sorry. Too many. There we go. The actions following the vote are dependent upon the outcome of the vote. Staff and the district's engineer have prepared the engineer's report, assuming that the vote passes in both areas. The engineer's report in front of you contains the most current proposed rate increase, which is reflected in tables 1 and 2. The draft that's attached to the staff report was from the May hearing of the resolution of intent, where the proposed rates were rounded to the nearest cent. But the report in front of you indicates the proposed rate instead rounded to the nearest dollar. Revisions to the engineer's report will be necessary should the vote in either one or both of the areas fail. An engineer's report that reflects the outcome of the vote will be signed by Council, then submitted to the county in time for the assessments of fiscal year 21 to 22. That is the end of my presentation, but I'm here for questions if you have any.
Any member of the Council have questions for Sean? Nope. Okay, at this time, the public hearing is now open, and comments can be provided and ballots can be submitted until the close of the public hearing. Anyone wishing to withdraw or a previously submitted ballot can do so, and anyone wishing to submit a new ballot in place of a ballot previously submitted may do so. Only one ballot per parcel will be accepted and counted. No ballots may be accepted or withdrawn once the public hearing is closed. No one here to withdraw or give a new ballot? And we can do this and open the public comment period?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, I'll open the public comments. Anyone wishing to make a public comment on this item? Go ahead, step up to the podium. Sir, go ahead.
Mayor Flores, Councilman, last time I think I had the privilege of talking to you was May 20th or somewhere along there, and that started this whole process. And I appreciate your intent to let it work its way through. Since that time, in fact, I was the one that Sean referred to. We met. I've had the chance to meet several times since that time, and
And I just want to get it on record that engineering has been very receptive. I have found them workable. We're not all there yet, but I am very confident in the process. And, in fact, last time I talked with Mike, he said how things coming along with the advisory board. That's in process, so we'll have that lined up. So I'm very optimistic about the future, and I love our community and will continue to do so. And so now I can officially say, I hope this thing passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment publicly? Okay, so we'll take a brief recess at this.
Actually, there's one more step. If you could just direct me to count the total number of ballots.
And before that, let me check with the web. Anyone from the web?
No.
Okay.
And we received no public comment.
Okay, so at this point, I'll close the public comments, and I'll ask the clerk, the public hearing is now closed, and we'll ask the clerk to report out the total number of ballots received. And we'll take a brief recess until he does that. It looks like a Okay, we can resume our meeting. And the clerk will state the total number of ballots received.
Mr. Mayor, Area 1 had a total number of ballots of 28, a total of 18 voted in support, and a total of 10 voted in opposition. So the preliminary results show that the proposed increase passed. That's for Area 1. Again, total of 28 votes, 18 in support, 10 in opposition. For Area number 2, we had a total number of ballots of 41, a total of 19 voted in support, and a total of 21 voted in opposition. We had one invalid ballot. The preliminary results show that the proposed increase failed. So Area 1 passed, Area 2 failed.
Okay.
So John, I've got a question about that, if you don't mind. I'm not sure who was responsible for putting together the resolution. I'm just going to presume that it was you. So we would be filling in the blanks in the last whereas. And there's no, because we had talked about during the staff report that there was going to be, we presumed that they had passed, but I don't know if we presumed or what to do when it gets a situation where one passed and one didn't pass. But I think that the last whereas kind of addresses that. Is that correct? Because it says, the city clerk has tabulated all assessment ballots submitted in favor and in opposition to the proposed assessment increases for each benefit area within Assessment District 95-1, and the certified following results. And then it says blank in favor and blank opposed for benefit area 1, and blank in favor and blank opposed in benefit area 2. So we just insert those numbers, and we can pass this resolution. There's not really much opportunity for discussion. This is just announcing the results. Okay. Thank you for helping me work through that.
So that's where we proceed now to filling out the resolution?
Staff will take care of that.
Okay.
Then may I go ahead and make the motion then?
Sure.
I'll move that we, unless, Bong, did you have something you want to say?
So will it change sort of how management goes? Because, one, we were proposing a whole new way to manage and take care of streets, and then one's going to say the same. So can you kind of explain that a little bit so that way we understand, so that way we can sort of help the citizens when they come and ask us what's going on?
Sure. The difference being in Area 1, we now have a stronger revenue stream that's going to allow us to prepare for the second maintenance. We can move ahead with the slurry seal in both, but we won't have the funding to do the second go-around in Area 2 because the vote failed.
And we don't know what the outcome is going to be yet as to, how we're going to address what, if any, changes need to be addressed in benefit area 2. I think you probably have some idea of what the consequences are going to be, but we don't need to make any decisions about that tonight. Is that
correct? Tonight was just receiving, tabulating, and recording the votes.
And then, Sean, if you could just clarify the level of improvements that will occur in both areas regardless of the vote.
Yeah, we have the reserves available to do the slurry seal, and then we have enough reserves to keep operating for several years to come, even in Area 2. We just have a stronger revenue stream in Area 1 that sets us up for the future. So we're going to have to look at Area 2 for the future, in the next upcoming years.
So I'm sorry, Bong, you had the floor. I've taken it over.
So will it potentially lead to where Area 1 looks better, is better upkept versus Area 2, or I fear that Area 1's gonna go, they're coming through our streets, they're coming through our entrances, it looks nicer, it looks cleaner, because we got more funds, and so I worry about that there might be some contention between the two areas because of what happened in this vote.
So like Sean said, we do have enough money, in the reserves to do the slurry seals in both. And I think it's in the city's best interest, based on what can happen in the future if votes don't pass and we don't have the revenue, to make sure that those streets stay in good condition. So we're recommending that we go ahead and do the slurry seal for both areas. For the time being, there's enough to maintain the same budget that we've had for the past couple of years, but the fund in Area 2 will start to dwindle, and there will have to be a decision at some point, just a few years away.
But we're not taking out the gates in Area 2 tomorrow, right?
Right,
Okay,
right.
All right,
Any more questions? Are you, Paul?
I was just gonna make the motion.
And, yeah, just for the record, we're not taking out the gates, and there's time for another vote, and if, or when will there be another opportunity for future votes?
Well, we'll have to, when it comes time for us to do the engineer's report next year, we'll evaluate the budget that we have and how long we think that's gonna last, and we may be in a position to ask for another vote for Area 2 only at that point.
And we will be communicating with Area 2, letting them know, one,
Yes.
what happened today, and two, what their options will be then.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
I have a question before the vote. Mike, how labor, I'm reluctant to have staff come back next year and retread these grapes. How much work did we have to put into this to get this far?
It was, I don't know if we have a tally of staff hours, but it was a significant amount of staff hours that we put into it in preparing for the public hearing and doing the notices and preparing the ballot notification, and doing the research that we needed to do for the property owners. I mean, it's all stuff that staff does, but it does take a lot of staff time. And I don't have an estimate of that for you now, but I'm if I would venture to guess, I would say 30 or so staff hours at least for.
And we
for the
don't
vote.
charge, we don't assess any fee for that, do we?
We will charge our staff time to the account, yes.
Okay. All right. I mean, I don't want to burden staff, but okay, that's all I have.
And there's no competition between the two neighborhoods. There's no real passage between one and the other, is there?
They're separate neighborhoods.
They're
yeah.
separate, so they go through different gates, and so
Yes.
so there's no competition. There's no one will look better than the other. It might happen in the future, but in the
The level of service that we can provide will be dependent on each area independently.
independently, and so okay.
And then, Mike, I just wanted to clarify, is going to be with the failure of Area 2, the bottom line is going to be that the roads will be repaired, but there will be no depreciation set aside going forward
Correct.
for the next repair.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll move that we go ahead and, include in, the resolution of the council, related to the results of the property owner protesting ballot proceedings that we just went through for Black Horse Estates. The entries be made, of the votes in the last whereas clause, and that we approve this resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries with 4 ayes and 1 absence. Thank you. Next item is item 11, consider approval of resolution adopting the City of Clovis 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. Mr. Armendariz.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So, yeah, there we go. All right, so tonight we'll be discussing the 2020 update to the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. This is, something's not, okay, there we go. So this is item 11 on the agenda, and tonight we'll be asking council to conduct a public hearing for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. After we conduct that public hearing, we'll ask that council consider approving a resolution to adopt the City of Clovis 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. The recommendation for tonight is to approve both of these items. So on the agenda tonight, we'll be discussing the purpose of the Urban Water Management Plan, the water service area population, water system demands, water supplies, SB X77 compliance, the Water Shortage Contingency Plan stages, demand management measures, agency coordination, public notice and adoption. To the right there is the cover to the Urban Water Management Plan. On the bottom right, you'll see the logo from Provis and Pritchard, who we contracted with to help prepare this plan. Heather Bashian from PMP is sitting here as consultant, is available for questions too, and we did a lot of work over the last several months preparing this plan. It's freezing. Keyboard? All right. So the purpose of the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, the Urban Water Management Planning Act and the Water Conservation Act of 2009 requires that we maintain efficient use of water supplies, we promote conservation programs, we ensure that water supplies are available for future beneficial use, and provides a mechanism for response during water droughts. This plan is a requirement for all urban water retailers who serve at least 3,000 service connections or 3,000 acre-feet per year. So the City of Clovis has approximately 37,000 services, and we serve 25,000 acre-feet per year. An acre-foot is close to 326,000 gallons. If you can imagine an acre of land, a foot depth, that's an acre-foot, or the size of a football field. The Urban Water Management Plan assesses long-term water use and supply over a 20-year horizon, and so this is the 2020 update. It goes from the 2020 calendar year through the 2040 calendar year in 5-year milestones. The update to the plan is required every 5 years, and off to the right are the different chapters that are included in the Urban Water Management Plan. The Water Shortage Contingency Plan is a requirement of the Urban Water Management Planning Act. It's required to be included in the plan. In 2015 is included as a chapter, and now it's a requirement to be included as a separate document. So it's included in the appendix of the Urban Water Management Plan. And what the Water Shortage Contingency Plan does is it addresses levels of action to be used by the city in response to water supply shortages, including a more than 50% reduction in water supply. Again, the plan can be, with it being separate, it can be revised at any time. There's an analysis of a five-year drought in the plan, and there are 6 different water shortage stages or levels that are included in the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. All right, population. So population is a big part of the plan. That's how we projected our future demands. So the current population includes the service areas of City of Clovis and then also Tarpey Village. So Tarpey Village is a county area. However, we do serve water to the Tarpey Village area, and there's about 3,600 people in Tarpey, and that growth is assumed to remain stable. There's no additional growth within Tarpey. The City of Clovis population is based off the DOF, or Department of Finance, 2020 number of close to 119,000 population. And then we're estimating close to 2% growth rate to reach about 175,000 people in 2040, which is consistent with our general plan. It's also consistent with the recent population projections we did with the sewer studies that we brought to council about a month ago. And so the graph off to the right shows the service population for the last 20 years, and you can see the green line to the right of that graph is consistent with how that population has grown over the last 20 years. So again, the population is an important part of the plan because that is how we determined our projected demands in our system. Our current or 2020 calendar year water use was about 25,000 acre feet. The pie chart up there on the slide shows the water uses by different sectors. And so about 75% or a little over that water use was from residential use, single family and multifamily. About 15% was CII, or commercial, institutional, industrial use, and the remaining 10% or so is landscape and losses in the system. The graph to the right of that is what we're projecting in 2040, that 20-year horizon, which is going to be about 35,000 acre feet. And so in that graph, the orange line shows the last previous 20 years of water use, and then that first orange dot is where we're at last calendar year, and you can see the 25,000 acre foot mark is about where we were back in 2010. So you can see our water use was 25,000 acre feet in 2010. We went down a little bit. We're now at in 2020, we're back at 25,000, but in that 10-year period, we've added about 30,000 in population, so we've been growing. From that point going forward, that green line is the future projected water use, going from 25,000 acre feet in the 5-year increments up to about 35,000 acre feet in 2040. Okay, so how are we going to serve, or how do we currently serve this demand, and how do we plan on serving this demand in the future? So we have 3 main sources of water. We have our surface water, primarily through the Kings River. We have groundwater through our wells in the Kings Subbasin, and then we have recycled water from our sewage treatment water reuse facility. We also have our banking agreements, Boswell and Waldron, with FID. And the chart off to the right, what that shows, if you start from the bottom, that light blue color, that's the projected use, or our use from groundwater. So that's about 10,000 acre feet a year, and you can see that remains consistent throughout the forecast period. That's our safe yield, what we can safely pull out of the ground with no additional, recharge, just what is coming from rain and canal seepage and other means like that. So the goal for the city is to use about 10,000 acre feet, or if we do recharge, we can use a little bit more from groundwater. And then the blue line above that is the surface water, and you can see that grows each year as the city grows inside the FID. We'll get more allocation through our conveyance agreement. The dark blue above that is our firm water supply agreement that we recently executed with FID last year. Jumping up to the top, the purple is the recycled water. That will also grow as we expand the plant, our sewage treatment water reuse facility. With recycled water, that offsets potable water. The peach color is the banking agreements we have with Boswell and Waldron, and then the smaller areas between those is the supply we're expecting to get as we annex into the Garfield Water District, the International Water District. If for some reasons those waters are not transferred to the city, there will have to be a different supply to supplant that water that's expected to come with those lands.
Paul, can I ask you a question related to this particular graph?
Yes.
It's a great graph, by the way. Can you help us to understand the cost of each of those supplies, those water supplies?
So they're operation maintenance cost or capital cost to secure that water?
Well, I would say the cost of really that's going to be transferred over to the citizen.
Okay, so well, groundwater is probably the cheapest. We can pump probably for $150 to $160 an acre foot. We can get groundwater wells. Surface water through our plant is probably close to about $200 an acre foot through our conveyance agreement with FID. Once you start calling on water from our banking agreements, Waldron, Boswell, the firm water supply.
And that's the peach area?
Yeah, so that'll be the dark blue and the peach area. Okay. The cost of water, then just to purchase the cost of water is $250 an acre foot. So let me backtrack. So with the light blue, just our normal conveyance agreement with FID, that cost of water, just the cost to purchase the water is about $50 an acre foot, and then you jump to about $250 for the other banking facilities from water supply. Okay. So answer your question, water will get more expensive as we need to call on these banking facilities to serve that water through our plant and to our customers as we continue to grow.
But I don't want to get to the end of your report, but the important component, it sounds like to me, is to make sure that we have enough water for our population growth. And it sounds like we've made arrangements already in place from some of the work that has been done by Public Utilities and by Luke to assure that we have water to supply our citizens, decades into the future.
Absolutely, and that's really...
It might cost us more, but we'll have it.
It might cost us more, and that's really what the Urban Water Management Plan does, is to show that we have that water supply to serve the growth that's projected over this 20-year horizon. And it doesn't end. We're continuing to plan for beyond that, too, so to serve really our general plan. Okay. Moving on to SB X77 compliance. So this was a big part of the 2009 and 2010 Urban Water Management Plan. What the plan, or what SB X77 required, is that we hit 20% water use, or reduction in water use by 2020. And so it established over a 10-year baseline, a 10-year average, which is 249 gallons per capita per day. And so that's that dashed line at the very top. And then by 2015, we were required to hit an interim target of a 10% reduction, or 224 gallons per capita per day. And so in 2015, that was after the 2015 drought. We had the mandated 36% conservation by the governor. And so we were able to easily achieve that with hitting about 165 gallons per capita per day. But ultimately, the requirement is 2020. So what did we do in 2020, the last calendar year? So the target, based on that 10-year baseline and 20% reduction, is close to 200 or 199 gallons per capita per day. And our actual use this last calendar year was 181 gallons per capita per day. So we've more than reduced our use more than 20%. We're actually about 27% approximately. The graph to the right shows the orange line shows the per capita use, and you can see it goes up and down, and then dashed lines show those different baselines. And so really what the goal is now going forward is to maintain that use under that blue dashed line, or that 2020 target. Okay, moving on to the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. So the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, it's pretty similar to what was brought forth in front of Council in 2016, where there were some ordinances and resolutions that were adopted then as far as water waste ordinances. But there were some changes from the 2015 plan. So in the 2015 plan, the Water Shortage Contingency Plan was required to be a chapter. In this 2020 plan, now it's a separate document included in the appendix. The 2015 plan required an analysis of a normal water year, a single dry water year, and a multiple 3-year dry assessment, whereas the 2020 plan calls for an assessment of a normal water year, single dry year, and then a 5-year drought or dry assessment. The other change was we went from 4 shortage levels or stages to 6. So it's all still the same percentages, but they spread that out. So 10%, 10 to 20%. So what that is if we're required, or we have a shortage of water of up to 10%, then we're stage 1, 10 to 20% stage 2, and then so forth, up to over 50%. The way we are conserving water are through some demand management measures. And so we're required, which again was part of the 2016 adoption of the plan, was to have a water waste prevention ordinance. And so we currently have that. Conservation through metering. All of our city customers are metered. We do have TARP, where there are about 350 to close to 400 services that are not yet metered, and so we'll be working on having those customers metered by 2025.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Paul, back to that previous screen with the, if we're showing we have enough water, how do we ever get to the 6 shortage level? I never understand that, because we're projecting we have enough water. And so when does it ever trigger these levels?
Yeah, that's a good question. You're absolutely right. So right now we do have, it won't necessarily be a water shortage that will trigger any of these levels. It will be a mandated conservation, like if the governor comes back and says 36% you're mandated, then we'll have to implement some of these measures. But through this 20-year horizon, we have a really robust system as far as water supply. We have our groundwater, our surface water, our banking water agreements. And so we are in a good position where you're absolutely right. It won't necessarily be a water shortage, but it'll be either the plant going down because of something happening or mandated from the governor.
Last time we had a shortage, it was how the governor implemented his mitigation plan versus us not having water.
Absolutely.
So that could happen again.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay, I think I left off conservation pricing. Also in 2015 or 16, we did our rate study, and so we changed our rates to have some conservation pricing. Then we also have our drought rates that we are able to implement through a resolution if needed. We continue to do public education and outreach. We also annually do a water loss audit for our system losses. And then we have our water conservation program. So some other optional items that we do consist of residential plumbing retrofits. We offer free of cost a water survey program where if our residents call and they need help setting their irrigation timer, or we'll send staff out to do an audit inside their house and finding leaking toilets or running faucets. We'll give them aerators. There's also a rebate program for washing machines and toilets that we offer. We have our CII conservation program with WELO, the Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. That's helped tremendously. And then we also do a school education program. Another requirement of the plan was to coordinate, not only with the public, but also with other adjacent agencies. And so March 2nd, we sent out a letter to FID, Flood Control, City of Fresno, County of Fresno, Garfield International, all the other local either water districts or agencies, notifying them of our intent to update the plan. On June 14th, we sent them copies of the plan to review and comment on. And on June 14th and June 21st, we posted in the Fresno Bee a notice of the public hearing, which we're having tonight, July 12th. And so tonight is the public hearing, and then we'll ask council to consider approving a resolution adopting the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And after adoption, within 30 days, we'll submit to the Department of Water Resources with a copy going to the State Library, City of Fresno, and Fresno County. So in summary, really what to take away from this presentation and the plans is one, we're in compliance with SB X77, and so we hit that 20% reduction threshold by 2020, which is great, meaning we're doing our part conserving water, and our residents have done a really good job, and we've been good stewards. With that being said, there's always more work to be done, and so we do have projects and programs where we'll be working on, like the metering and additional recharge and just operating the plant more efficient and doing other measures like that. We are growing. Demand will grow too, and so again, this plan is planning for that growth in 20 years to serve water to our residents as the city continues to develop. Again, we have a really good water supply. We're fortunate where we're at based on our agreements with FID and our access to Kings River water, our banking agreements that we have in place, and we also have recycled water, which is great to offset that potable water. And so we have a good water supply. We have a plan in place should we experience a water shortage or mandated water conservation, and so that's our water shortage contingency plan. And again, in the next 20 years, it may not necessarily be a water shortage, but there may be an instance where we are mandated to conserve water, and so we have a plan with different measures in order to do that. And then ultimately, we will be reviewing and updating this plan every 5 years, and so we'll be keeping track of population, of growth, additional water supplies, and reevaluate that in about 5 years. Today is not my day with this.
Questions for Paul, Drew?
I guess maybe I should know this, but I was surprised to hear that we have quite a few unmetered homes in Tarpey. Quickly, why is that?
So when we took over Tarpey, that's a county area, they weren't required to have meters. And so I think there's 1,400 or so services in Tarpey, and we do have a program that we offer where they can pay about $900, and there's a payment plan, and we'll install a meter, which is a really good deal. And so every now and then we'll remind residents, hey, you know, you'll get some savings if you install a meter. But there are about 350 or so remaining customers in Tarpey that are not yet metered. Our goal, or actually a state requirement, is to have all services metered by 2025, and so we'll be working towards that over the next few years.
I have to assume that there is resistance from, if you go over in that area, you have 5 yard cars at one house, so imagine there's probably a lot of resistance to this.
It's an interesting area, and some of the services are on private property. There are larger yards there, and so some residents just don't want to do it. So we're slowly making some traction, but yeah, we'll have to get them all whether we want to or not, we'll have to get them all transferred to meters by 2025.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
If I may, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, we have a, like, community meter for that area, that the ones that are unmetered, that then they divvy that up, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So the water to the unmetered residents is measured, and then it's divided equally amongst them.
Yeah.
So it's not that there is no metering, it's those not individual meters.
That's right, yeah, there is, so we know how much water is going into the area, but 350 or so individual residents don't have their own meter, and so, we have all the water going in the area, we know the metered accounts, and then whatever's left over is divvied up evenly amongst those who do not yet have a meter.
Is it divvied up by parcel number? So if I have a larger parcel,
It is.
the guy next door who's not doing anything, he has to make up, he pays the same price?
Which
Okay,
is one,
all right.
usually one of our selling points is when we try to encourage them to install meters, is that exactly, you know.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Be responsible for the water you're actually using.
Paul, excellent report, and I commend the staff, and I think probably Luke, when you were on already, to have us so prepared for water and to see such a great need. Does annexation accelerate the need to do any of this? Because I see that it's a population, sort of the metric that they use, but if we annex, another 1,000 acres, does it increase it at all, or do you wait until there's an actual population growth?
So I guess so we have water to serve annexations that are occurring now, but that does take water away from future planned growth, if that makes sense. And so if we know we're annexing an area that's not currently part of the general plan, we may have water to serve that area right now, but we know now we need to make up for that amount at the long term. And we'll probably start that ahead of time. As Luke likes to say, water will never be as cheap as it is now, or not cheap, but as the price as it is now. So it would behoove us to work on getting an additional supply now to serve, but it won't necessarily be for that annexed area. Maybe it might be for additional at the end.
But Paul, you included Garfield water and your international water, and therefore, if we move into those areas, and we're still not there yet, are we?
No.
And therefore, we may have some water supply brought into the city when we move or annex into those areas.
So that's a good point. So our conveyance agreement and the firm water supply agreement specifically say that water won't be served in those areas or won't supplant that use, and so that there will need to be water equal to that amount brought to the city, whether it is from that water district or another means.
Okay, say that slowly again.
Okay, so for inside of Garfield and international water districts, if we were to annex in those areas, we would need to, if we were not to, we would be asking that water supply that currently goes to that land or in that water district would be transferred to the city. If that were not to happen, then we would be requiring a different water supply coming to supplant that amount.
And we will be made whole.
And then we would be made whole.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Any more questions for Paul? Okay. Okay, I'll open up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? Anybody on the web?
There are none.
And we receive no correspondence?
Correct.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion on the resolution.
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the resolution adopting the City of Clovis' 2020 Urban Water Management Plan.
I'll second that.
Your motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have four ayes and one absence. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Good report, Paul. Thank you. I like the graphs.
Okay. Next item is administrative items. Administrative items are matters on the regular city council agenda other than public hearings. Number 12, consider status update regarding the city's ongoing efforts to establish procedures for reviewing and analyzing potential vehicle miles traveled, VTM, impacts, and policy direction regarding proposed modifications to the circulation element of the 2014 Clovis General Plan incorporating VMT-related goals and/or policies. And staff members, Ricky Caperton, and I see Sean here too. So both of you guys.
You know, whenever I see Ricky up here, it means it's going to be controversial. I hope they like buy you a beer after every meeting that you have to take on one of these subjects.
Well, good evening, Council. I'm back again, this time on VMT. Ricky and I are going to provide an update for you on VMT and discuss some policies with you. We also have tonight some of our consultants. We have in person Mike Arrington, Principal Engineer from Kittleson and Associates, and Carrie, if you could help me verify, do we have on the phone Fernando Sotelo from Kittleson?
Yes.
And do we also have Steve McMurtry from De Novo?
Yes, we do.
All right, so we've got the whole consultant team with us here tonight. So Mike and Fernando are most familiar with the technical aspects of the VMT program, and then Steve is more familiar with the CEQA aspects, and that's why we've got them here to answer some of those harder questions that we can't answer. And we're also here tonight to ask Council to consider policy and provide direction regarding some text amendments to the 2014 General Plan Circulation Element. To give you a little brief history, SB 743 was signed into law in 2013 and took effect July 1st, 2020. This law changes the CEQA metric for transportation analysis from LOS to VMT. So imagine LOS as congestion and VMT as distance traveled. So VMT helps to promote infill, alternative transportation choices, and to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Staff contracted with Kittleson Associates in March 2020 to update our traffic guidelines to include both LOS and VMT. A draft version of this document was presented to Council and adopted by Council in July of 2020. Following that, staff and the development community started to struggle with the real-world implementation of this new law and ultimately returned to Council in April of 21 to consider more options. The result of the April 21 meeting was to amend the city's contract with Kittleson to provide a citywide VMT analysis of the general plan circulation element. The thought was that this might provide additional streamlining of the VMT analysis for some projects. Prior to April 2021, staff began to notice that projects that could not screen out were starting to slow in how they were processing their entitlements. The intent of the citywide VMT analysis is that projects that are consistent with the general plan would have the ability to tier off of this work that we're going to finish, and thereby reducing the need to prepare an EIR project by project by project. And next, I'm going to hand this off to Ricky. Here comes the tough stuff.
Okay, so to further kind of explain that concept of, or the benefit, if you will, of doing the supplemental analysis. So as it stands today, when you have development and no sort of coverage through a supplemental EIR analyzing VMT at a broader general plan level scale, there's potentially the need for more frequent EIRs. However, once you do that supplemental EIR, it kind of gives that coverage that Sean was just mentioning and allowing proposed development to then tier off of that. Kind of a simpler way to put it, you're sort of acknowledging at that point, hey, you know, there's significant impacts with VMT, we're acknowledging that, and if a project comes in that's consistent with the general plan land use, VMT may no longer necessarily be the trigger in and of itself that requires an EIR for that project. So that's why it kind of shows as like that umbrella coverage for development. So as part of these efforts, VMT mitigation measures will be identified in the supplemental EIR. In terms of a VMT mitigation fee, which I know is kind of been a hot topic or a question that we get pretty often, from the development community. It's not going to be established under these efforts. It's a whole sort of separate effort that would have to take place in order to establish a fee. Even if there were a fee established, there's still no guarantee that future projects wouldn't have to be prepare an EIR. It could certainly help, but it's really the fee is designed to be a tool of mitigation, but not sort of the end-all, be-all to necessarily get out or absolve the need for doing an EIR later. So in terms of the general plan element, or amendment rather, again, we're only amending the circulation element portion of it. We're not touching any other elements of there. And really what that does is we've added or included goals and policies that tie in VMT to our element that previously only focused on LOS level of service. This one furthers or ensures compliance with VMT regulations, and then it also provides a basis for supporting project approvals in the future on the basis of complying with general plan policies that do support and encourage VMT reducing measures. And it also helps to provide streamlining for projects consistent with VMT-related goals and policies. So the draft amendments were included in Attachment 1 to your staff report. Just to summarize sort of the intent and spirit of those. The VMT-related goals and policies really focus on increased connectivity, increased density, promoting alternative modes of transportation, such as carpooling or otherwise discouraging single occupancy vehicle use, and also promoting collaboration with the development community and partner agencies to further advance and kind of study VMT as we sort of start to implement this and always stay hopefully on the forefront of either new or improved mitigations as people start to learn more about VMT and how it's actually implemented in the real world. So following tonight and getting any kind of direction from council, staff will continue the efforts to complete the supplemental EIR. Again, tonight is really just kind of a check-in and status update, just so we didn't have a very long gap between, we come back to you next for any action. So we really wanted to give you that face time with our consultants to ask any questions, and also to kind of give you a sense of what direction we're headed in terms of the general plan update. As of now, we anticipate completion by early 2022. After tonight, we'll continue on with the supplemental EIR. Procedurally, that takes, several months just by nature of CEQA procedures and having to follow that. So we feel confident that we'll be back in early 2022. When we do come back, we'll have the revised circulation element for consideration, the supplemental EIR for adoption, the final VMT analysis guidelines, because again, right now they're still, interim. And then we'll also have the VMT user tool. So it's sort of the big package of everything we've been working towards will be the next item that comes before you for consideration. So with that, staff recommends that the council provide any policy direction related to our efforts on VMT and the general plan amendments shown as in attachment 1. Again, we do have Mike Aronson here from Kittleson, who's the numbers guy for VMT. So if you have any of those kind of tricky questions for how the model works, he's the guy. And then we also have Fernando on the line, as well as Steve, who is the CEQA consultant for this effort. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Okay. Mom?
Ricky, in the report it says that Kittleson is working with staff to calculate VMT on a citywide scale. So does that mean we are developing those numbers specifically for us and potentially not use with the county, that regional, that map with all the red and green and yellow? Is that what it's meaning, or am I reading it wrong? Am I interpreting that wrong?
Yeah, so as part of these efforts, those numbers will be calculated. Hopefully, that map will improve a little bit in some of the areas, but it's going to give a more accurate, if you will, snapshot of what's on the ground today, based on what's in the current model, or currently what's shown in the map.
And really before us is just the circulation and the language that is presented.
That's correct.
for us to approve that?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I have a couple comments on that. Looking at page 597, okay, and I thank you for the red line and additions. Because it's circulation, I thought the overarching goal was good without having to put VMT in that statement, because it's already one of the goals. That's just my thought, because I thought it ended well right before the redlining, because we're just doing efficient movement of people and goods. That's circulation in general. And when we put that VMT language in, it kind of, to me, I read it as, we're only doing it through well-planned pedestrian connections and improved connectivity.
Okay.
And it read like that to me. But yet, when you read all the others, it had much more detail than just that. So just a thought.
Okay, appreciate it.
As you went through it, I think the titles on top were not changed. The next pages, like goal number 4, you wrote a whole new one, but then when it was presented, it didn't have any of it. It was still in the black. So
That's correct. If it was red, it was new. And for the VMT related ones, I was trying to create a separate goal and kind of nestle it under its own goal rather than kind of.
Because when you went through each of the goals, you did put red in it. So I'm just saying you didn't change the goal name on top.
Yeah, some of them, the policies, I included under existing goals, and then other one I added an actual goal, which is, I think, goal number 8 now.
Okay. Okay, for example, goal number 4, you rewrote it as a well-planned, maintained pedestrian. When you go to page 601, it just says a bicycle and transit system, so goal number 4. So are those the same goals?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that needs to be transferred over.
So
goal 4 would be the revised one.
Okay, so what we see in the front is what the goal should be.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
And then for goal number 8, I'm here being the guy. Goal number 8, you use possible and feasible, just so that so on number 8, you put feasible, and then in the front page, you use possible.
Okay.
Just so that we can see what it is. And then on 8.1, I think that's page 605, I was wondering if that is where we work or incorporate our city transit into helping with VMT. Is that where it is?
That can be one component of it.
Okay, so if transit was going to do anything to reduce VMT, it would fit under that sub-goal, the 8.1, or is it not clear enough? Because I wanted transit to be a part of this process and how we can improve our transit systems and working with development community to be a way to reduce sort of VMT. And so I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know if it was there or if it was 8.2 where it was in the transit routes.
Yeah, I was just going to point in 8.2. So it could be classified under 8.1, and we can certainly, improve the language on that. But otherwise, 8.2 calls out transit routes specifically.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Anything else? I'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to comment on item 12? Comments about the web?
Yes, we have Mike Prandini. Mike, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Evening, Mayor, members of the council. Mike Prandini, representing the Building Industry Association. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to address the council to encourage you to continue, allow the staff to continue their analysis and work on this VMT issue. It's going to be critical to the industry and continued construction to provide new homes for the industry to solve this problem along with the city. Because right now, there are no large projects. I believe staff can confirm that. There are no projects in the pipeline that are moving at all, that are more than approximately 50 units in size. And in order to develop the Northwest and to complete development in your Southeast and to the begin development in your northeast, this VMT issue is going to have to be resolved in a way that doesn't do damage to the industry by adding such costs that it makes any development infeasible. So I just encourage the council to allow the staff to continue with its work, and we'll discuss various points along the way with the staff on what they're seeing and what they're finding, and what ultimately may need to be done at the conclusion of this study and analysis. Thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else?
No, that's all.
And we received no correspondence?
We did not.
Okay. And what Mike Brandini brings up from BIA, is that true now? Are we, all developments that have been entitled under the old system, we've reached the point where any new development will have to be entitled under this new VMT?
Yeah, well, yeah, so the VMT is for when CEQA analysis is required, so yes, the simple answer is yes. We need to analyze VMT in most cases, unless it screens out. But a lot of the projects that we work on, the larger ones, it's a little bit harder for them to screen out.
Okay.
Just a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Rico, are we still on time with regards to that interim EIR to finish by, I thought it was like next year sometime? Is that still sort of the time frame?
Yeah, so early 2022 is when we'd come back with kind of the full package of everything.
Okay, and that will also include sort of more concrete, the mitigation fees, all the other reports, all the other measures as well?
Well, not the fees.
Okay.
As part of the EIR, it will identify mitigation measures in there. Those will provide some options and ideas for mitigation. It may not necessarily be, everything that's required. But in terms of a fee, the fee would be a separate undertaking if we choose to go that.
Would that come sooner?
No, the fee would be a whole separate effort. Yeah, in order to have a VMT mitigation fee, you have to have a program developed. You have to then, analyze what the fee is going to potentially be, and then that has to have its own separate CEQA. So it's a whole separate process that would take. I mean, I'll kind of look to Mike, but probably the better part of a year or so to do if we're going to go down that route.
So what we're doing next year completes our EIR with VMT included. An applicant comes in with a 2,000 unit, they will then require to do a CEQA analysis, and just talk on VMT with sort of what you just spoke about, with fees potentially and or mitigation measures in there. So they will have to do it? Because we haven't really developed it yet internally?
Yeah, so once we do the supplemental EIR, it's going to look at the land uses that we have today. So if you look at our, general plan land map, if a project comes in and it's consistent with that, because that's what we're analyzing, VMT would not necessarily be the trigger in and of itself that would require an EIR. There may still be a need for an initial study or some other transportation analysis, but since under that supplemental EIR, we're essentially saying, hey, these are significant impacts, for sure, acknowledging that. As long as that project's consistent with that land use, then VMT wouldn't be the trigger for an EIR. There may be other impacts, depending where the site is. Maybe there's biological impacts or cultural resources that may trigger an EIR separately, but VMT itself wouldn't be the trigger for an EIR.
But there may be projects that will trigger a VMT further analysis, further CEQA.
That's correct.
Okay, and when they do that, then that's when you're saying we're not ready for that because we don't have a mitigation analysis yet with the mitigation. Okay.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Okay, so tonight you wanted council to give policy direction on attachment 1. I think Vong was the only one that's kind of giving you any feedback on that. Other than that, this is just a report and giving us an update of where this all stands. So.
That's correct. It was also, an opportunity to introduce our consultants, and if you did have any kind of, lingering questions about VMT or how it's calculated, that sort of thing, that, the consultants themselves can address that as the experts in the matter.
No, the only thing I heard tonight that really is of my concern is what BIA is saying is that the concern is that we need to get this done. But as far as I understand is that of the cities of this county, we're probably one of the ones that is ahead of the game. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, based on my understanding, I think we're in the front leading pack of that. I know City of Fresno has efforts that they're continuing to undergo, but we're certainly at that forefront.
So I want to thank staff for your efforts, because that's what I keep hearing consistently, that as far as trying to get all these guidelines in place regarding VMT, that you guys have done a great job as far as trying to get this accomplished, and because of the immensity of the work that needs to be done. So thank you.
I just, if you want council direction, I think the direction is forward. So keep moving forward. I see no need at this point to make any course corrections. If something comes up, then certainly we'll bring it to your attention. So good work.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to city manager comments.
Good to be back in a somewhat normal setting, be up here at the big kids table, and and just to have the chambers open to the general public without a bunch of seats taped off. So we're glad to be here.
Thank you. Council's comments. Vong?
Yes, I was at the Measure C Executive Committee meeting, and so I think there are 22 members. So the committee voted to include 5 more members to that executive committee to have a decision. It wasn't big enough? There were members who felt like certain interest groups were not represented, and so they expanded it to include 5 more sectors in order to be included. So I just wanted to report on that. I think we should still be on schedule, and we will meet again in next month. So I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Bob?
Nothing.
Drew?
Okay, I can talk about Northern California? No.
I have nothing. And I have nothing, so we're adjourned. Thank you. Next meeting, July 19th. Thank you.